Hey everybody, how are you doing? I'm Dr. Gail and Rebecca Hardcastle Wright will be here in a minute. In fact, she just got here. She's coming home right now. And let me bring her in. She didn't know that we were going live. Okay, well, here she comes. Hey Rebecca, how are you doing?
Hi.
I'm so sorry I didn't tell you it was live. I was going,
That's okay.
I think I had one other person a while ago and forgot to tell them I was live, but I'm so glad you're here. But I just wanted to introduce, I'm Dr. Gail. This is Rebecca Hardcastle Wright, and we're going to be talking about her book today, The Exoconscious Humans. And you can see how many bookmarks I have on this. But let me say hello to some people. Let's see. Hey, Tina. Hey, Spirit Watcher Suzanne. Hey, Dream Journey One. While they're all coming in. Hey, Susie 007. While they're coming in, we're just going to talk about you. Hey, Dream Journey One. So, so first, Rebecca, you ready? I mean,
I'm ready.
you need to settle down here. Hey, White Dragon. Hey, Pamela. So while they're coming in, we're just going to talk a little bit about your background first.
Okay.
Like, where are you from? And your journey, your professional journey, and then we'll go into your other journeys, your spiritual journeys or your ET contacts, those kind of things. So let's start off with the normal 3D stuff first.
Okay.
Okay. So tell me
So
what.
I was born in Clarksburg, West Virginia. It's a small, I guess a small city now in kind of the heart of West Virginia. I lived there most of my life. My earliest years were all spent there, either in Clarksburg or Buchanan, which was an even smaller town, but it was in the coal mining region. So the ground was very porous, a lot of Celtic people, a lot of miners from different areas of the world had come there actually to work in the mines. So it was very, very interesting. And then I moved to Dayton, Ohio, and spent a great deal of time there. And then went off to school and just studied various places in school. And I was a childhood experiencer. And in terms of my professional life outside of the experiences. Of course, I had a lot of random jobs growing up, but I became, I was an ecumenical chaplain in Dayton, Ohio at Wright State University. So that was very interesting.
Wow, yeah.
Yeah, it was a very interesting school built from the ground up to be handicap accessible. There were students at that school that actually went to school in a bed, went to university classes in a bed. It was so accessible. It's quite remarkable. And I write about it in my book, some of the things that happened there. It was new. So there was no Hillel, there was no Muslim group. So I just kind of took it upon myself and did the programming for Hillel and Muslim students. And
So what about your education then?
my education.
Because you have a PhD, so how did that happen?
Well, I have a master's in divinity in philosophical theology, and then I went from there to get a PhD in parapsychic science.
Oh, really? I didn't even know that existed.
Well, it did at the time. I haven't really followed with the school to see what they're doing with that degree program, but it was very interesting because it allowed me not only to read into the whole archive of alternative paranormal literature and get a degree for it was really fun. Mm-hmm. But it also allowed me in my thesis, I did my thesis on exoconsciousness, so I could expand that term.
Right.
As I did that. And then I went from there, and I had been a therapist. So as a chaplain, you're also a therapist. A lot of your job is to be a therapist. And I had gone from traditional therapy into alternative therapy. I went to here in Phoenix, it's called Southwest Institute of Healing Arts. It's an actual hands-on healing school, alternative healing modality schools. And I took their program in hypnotherapy. They have many programs in hypnotherapy. I went through them. I also took their life coaching. So I was able to, not only from an intellectual paranormal standpoint, broaden my education, but also from a therapeutic standpoint, because it was all hands-on.
Right.
So it's
Well,
not just intellectual, but it was practical learning.
yeah, you've got to be one of the hardest working people I've ever met. I can't believe how many things you have done and are doing. So, okay, well, what about your experiences? How you said it started as your childhood. So, tell me that journey.
Right. So that journey, my my earliest recollections were around the age of 3. I was very aware of beings around me, beings in my bedroom. As I got a little older, being outside, going into so I was simultaneously in 2 different dimensions as a child, cognitively and consciously. I said that ground was porous. It was kind of a lead in to the fact that I was taken underground a lot as a child. So I was pulled into the underground realms. You could say the second dimension, the first dimension. It was very different than, going into like our 3D world. I was very cognizant. I grew up in an era and in a town where I was allowed a lot of freedom at a very young age. I was allowed to be outside. I was allowed to play outside. Nobody was tracking me on my mom wasn't tracking me on her phone. It was a safe little neighborhood. And I had vivid memories of being pulled under the ground and then popping up out of the ground.
Oh, that's fascinating. I got to talk to you a little bit about that, because whenever I was doing my interplanetary liaison work, and when I came to planet Earth to get the, I called myself the complaint department, because that's what I was doing. Well, I was going all over, like I was talking to the trees, the birds, I was going in the water. But one of the things I did do was go into Earth and talk to Mother Earth. I didn't not like that. I felt claustrophobic, and I kept popping my head out like I was in water. I kept going up, and she was going, "You're doing fine, you're breathing," but I kept going up because I popped my head out to get air and then go back down with her. And I don't know why I was doing that, but I was just getting claustrophobic. So that's just funny how you are talking about popping up.
I think it's part of that childhood experience. You don't know what claustrophobia even is when you're a child. So it's like, oh, this is just part of my reality. So I was simultaneously going underground and communicating with these beings and just being in these different frequencies of, as you say, Mother Earth is a good way to put it. And simultaneously, I was going on board the ships as a child. Right. And I knew that there was some kind of, I don't know which direction that was going in, but they were connected. That one was connected to the other and always has been. And I guess it was really only later in my life that I started to see the fact that I was going underground that was connected to, I was probably coming in as a shaman, like past lives as a shaman. And I was probably reenacting that by going into the earth, because shamans do go into the earth as well as into the sky. So I was doing both of those at one time. And I went to what a lot of people call terms star seed. It's star school. My story is really not that different than other people's. I was taken into the craft. I was, I had a mentor that I worked with very closely. I was taken into these massive auditoriums with other people and educated. I met them. I mean, even today I'll meet people and we'll just kind of look at each other. And Marilyn Gowacki, she's somebody that maybe you should have on your show. She's really interesting. She lives up outside of Albany, New York. And I can send you her information. And I mean, the first time I met Marilyn was like, she looked at me, she goes, "I was on the ship with you." And I'm like, "Yeah, absolutely. You were on the ship with me." And she channels Zazar, which is really quite wonderful. She works with some other amazing women and channels Zazar and has really committed her life to that. And so on the craft, I met people that I've, worked with in my life. I was given direction as to what my mission was, what I was here for. Some of that, there's a your audience might be interested. There's a researcher named Ralph Ring who went into near-death experiences with children he studied near-death children that had near-death experiences, and that then led him into looking at children who had extraterrestrial encounters.
Oh.
And found that because there's a very close similarity to that happens with us, and he was rather like John Mack. He tested them and said, they were really sane. They just had these different psychic experiences in their life that moved them in a different direction, and children that have psychic experiences as children and are conscious of having them start to develop as a result of it, a feeling that they're safe with these beings. Mm-hmm. Where some children that they know something happened, but somehow it was blocked and they're unconscious of it, they feel it more as a trauma to them.
Right.
So there's just everyone is so different in terms of what we experience. So yeah. I wrote about that in my first book called Exoconsciousness, Your 21st Century Mind. I just wrote about, it was kind of like my exoconscious autobiography. And I can't say enough about how important it is to actually sit down like you're doing, writing about who you are, where you came from, how this manifested in your life, how it's moving through your life. Because writing, the detail of writing and the psychological, spiritual, emotional intensity that comes from those dumps that you put together when you're writing and it takes a form are so important for your conscious maturation.
Yeah. Well, they told me to start writing everything down.
Yeah.
I was that I volunteered. I mean, I was fine with it. I didn't realize I was going to be writing so much, but yeah, they told me to start writing down. So I got journals and just continually writing in the journals.
And then I think, interestingly enough, much of what I was given as a child. So I went on from there to develop a professional life. And then I got married. I have children, and you go in a very different, I'd say, state of consciousness in order to do that. Because when you have especially young children, you have to be present to them consciously at all times because you are the person responsible for them. So it wasn't until probably, I would say, in my mid 40s that I started having, when my children were getting older, that's when I started having and I got divorced. I started having very, very intense paranormal ET, multidimensional experiences, all in this enclosed period of time. And part of those experiences were to actually go back and re-educate me as to what they gave me as a child.
Right. I think, isn't that pretty common for people?
I think that's very common. So it sort of goes in stages, and when they need to activate you again, they come back in and they give you the information again. Right. So I, for example, that happened to me with I had a lot of orb activity as well as a lot of extraterrestrial activity. And I also want to add that, so I moved to Arizona in 1992 and to Phoenix. And as all of my life would have it, I end up moving to this kind of a suburb mountain town of Phoenix called Fountain Hills. And there was a woman there, Dr. Ruth Hover, and she ran an experiencer group, which ended up being probably she probably had the longest experiencer group of the nation.
Okay.
And I got to be part of that. So during that time, I was not only having this paranormal activity in my life, but I also had a place that I could take it. I could take it to Ruth. I could take it to our experiencer group. I could take it to my friends that were in the group. So it was a much more grounded experience, I think, than had I just been all alone.
Oh yeah, well, you know, I had a friend, the only metaphysical friend that I had at the time when this all started happening to me, and I kept running to her, going, "I know something's wrong with me. I know I have a brain tumor. I need an MRI." And she kept going, "No, I know you. You're okay."
Right.
And I didn't know any of that stuff. Like she was having your spiritual awakening. I had no idea what that was. Of going, looking at her like, "What's that?" And then I was meeting all the different ETs. I'd go running to her, and she would tell me what they were. If it hadn't been for her, I'm sure I would have been somewhere locked up, or either I would have been getting that MRI if it hadn't been for her. So I was very fortunate. And then the whole time I was trying to find people who were doing the same thing or having the same experiences, which I could not find anybody. I don't know that they were wanting me to find anybody until now, because I think I was supposed to get my information directly from them. I don't think they were wanting me to have a lot of outside influence. But all right, well, let's go ahead and start talking about your book, your Exoconscious Humans, which I have read. And I want to start off with the basic of how did you come up, or is that term out there all the time, the exoconscious? Is that a term that is familiar? Because I had never heard about it until you. So have I missed the boat and didn't even know that term existed? Or is that something new, or has that been around forever?
That was a word that in the early 2000s, I was a single mom. I had kids at home, and as I said, I was in this ET experiencer group. I was reading a lot. I was having a lot of activity around me and within me, a lot of this coming back. And I woke one morning, my alarm went off. It's one of those, the radio alarms, you could hit the snooze button and sleep for like 5 minutes. And I remember I reached over and I hit that snooze button, and I distinctly remember thinking, oh, I've got to get up. I have to go to work. I've got to get the kids' lunches packed. I've got to get them to school. I just need these 5 more minutes. My head went back on the pillow, and the word exoconsciousness just came, not in my mind. It like flooded throughout my body. Like and it's sort of scriptural in the scriptures in the Bible. It talks about the word became flesh. I would say exoconsciousness became my flesh.
Okay.
And I knew then that I was to be doing that work. Now, some interesting things were going on in Phoenix at the time. And one of the things that were going on was that a lot of my friends were very involved with the Phoenix lights, the mass sighting over Phoenix that happened in 97. I didn't see it. I have all these friends in these groups, and nobody tells me. Nobody calls me and says, go outside and look, this just happened. I miss all of it. And I was okay with that, because I think once the word exoconsciousness came to me, I knew then that I was supposed to stay in consciousness. I was supposed to stay in my lane of research. I wasn't supposed to be a craft researcher. And so during that time, during the early 2000s, Michael Salla and a few other people, Stephen Bassett in the ufology field, were starting to put together initiatives to try to be more academic. And so I remember Michael reached out to me and said, write an article about exoconsciousness, and I'm going to put it in my journal, in my exopolitics journal. So that was the first time. And I had come out of an academic background too. My dad, he wasn't an academic, but he was extremely well educated. And I was very comfortable footnoting and researching and everything that goes along with that. That was familiar terrain for me. And I was, very thrilled to be able to do that. And then it just kind of grew from there. So the first definition of exoconsciousness was it was the study of the extraterrestrial origins, dimensions, and abilities of human consciousness, so that we have this extraterrestrial component in our consciousness. That was how I defined it. Now I define it not so much as a study or an academic research, but that it's an innate ability that all humans have. So it's the innate ability to connect, communicate, and co-create with extraterrestrials, multidimensionals, and spiritual beings.
Okay. All right. Within the term you came up with, the other was the transhumans. Now, is that a word that you came up with, or is that one that's already existing?
No, that was a word that probably, I see in the book exactly when it came. I think one of the Huxleys termed that word in one of their books, maybe even in the late 1800s. I can't remember exactly, but they termed that word transhuman. And what a transhuman is someone who believes, so their kind of their worldview is that humans, in order to advance, so advance biologically, advance psychologically, spiritually, all the advancements, that we need to have a technological extension in order to evolve and move forward. So that could be, the extension could be an artificial limb. It could be sensors inside your brain. It could be a brain to computer sensory connection. It could be genetic. It could be a genetic vaccine. It could be a genetic CRISPR that goes in and cuts your DNA, so that your DNA needs to be technologically edited in order for you to advance. So any across the board, that any could be a geological thing where the atmosphere around humans needs to be artificially changed. That's what transhumanism is. But the thing to realize about transhumanism is that it's really about metering, monetizing, and making it into a surveillance system. But early in the 1930s, there was a group called the technocrats. They were actually from the 1800s, late 1800s, but in the 30s, they coalesced at Columbia University, and they began to talk about technocracy. So many transhumanists are also technocrats. So what technocrats want to do is to take these extensions that the transhumans want to have us have, and to actually move those into an economic system. So no politics, no religion, no spirituality, no community, everything. Washington, D.C., or the political capital of your country is no longer meaningful. All that's meaningful is the economic system of technocracy. So that would be like central bank digital currency.
So would that be like a person is just like a human computer? Is that what you're kind of talking about?
Well, it's interesting that you brought that up. So it could be someone that's a cyborg, becomes a cyborg. So as I'm researching my book, there was always this sort of belief that was floated out, was that all of this technology that's coming forward from Microsoft or Apple or whatever systems bringing it forward, that it's endeavoring to make computers like humans. Mm-hmm. So they want computers to be little humans.
Right.
And the more I got into that research, the more I saw that that's not at all what they're doing. They're trying to make humans into computers.
Right. Well, what brings my thought to that is the grays, which the small grays are kind of like the computers. And then they have the tall grays, which are more human or gray-like, like natural. So, they talk about that they are our future, or they are us. So that kind of wonder if that's kind of the direction we're going in. Like we'll have all these little computer things running around, but there'll be also the regular humans too. What are your thoughts on that?
Well, you're talking about, you're kind of talking about, is there going to be a split? Are we going to see, are we going to have people that are cyborgian transhumans? And then are we going to have natural human consciousness? What propelled me, the passion that I had to write the book was because I began to see the deeper I got into the research. And I was putting this research together in like 2014, 2015. I was starting to see all of this coming together. And the more I dug into it, and I was living in Washington, D.C. at the time, working for the astronaut, Dr. Edgar Mitchell. And the more I saw this coming forth, the more I saw that, well, if you change the human genetics, if you change the DNA, if you change the biology, if you put in place brain to computer infrastructure that they're already implementing, humans becoming computers, as you say, then what happens to human spirituality? What happens to the natural chakra energy systems within our body? And then what happens to our soul? Right. What happens to our eternal soul? What happens to our spirit? And I began to see that really humans were the prize. So if we can get these humans to become computers, then we have their soul, we have their spirit, we have all of the energetics that make them human. And we have their psychic abilities. So a big thing for me was psychic intelligence. And what I saw happening with transhumanism was it was going to suppress our natural psychic ability. So once the brain to computer interface equipment, because it goes into us, into our brain, into our nervous system, then it alters how we access God. It alters how we access our psychic ability. So for a transhuman, their worldview is everything is in the brain and the nervous system. That's kind of the fount of all knowledge and wisdom is in those organs in the human body. For an exoconscious human, we see it as, no, we're an energy system or a frequency or a resonating capacity that's going out into the field of consciousness. So when you take that away and you either minimize it, hack it, or delete it, then that field's no longer accessible to us.
Right. Okay. Ooh, heavy information. Gosh, that's a lot, Rebecca. And all I could think of a few minutes ago was, I don't know, that movie of the Big Bang Theory when Sheldon wanted to be a computer. He didn't want to have any personality. He just wanted to be a computer. That's all I could think of.
And I think in my book, I write a lot about, so there's, it's really important to realize that it's a three-prong approach, primarily, transhumanism. It's geoengineering, so it's engineering all of our environment. Space, so now we have these arrays of satellites. We have HARP going into our ionosphere, and we have CERN under the ground. We have artificial weather being created every day across the planet. So that's a geoengineered environment. The second thing is genetic engineering. So they're not only genetically engineering humans, they're moving toward genetically engineering all forms of plant life, which started with Monsanto and GMO. It's just gone into exponential leaps ahead. And the third important, so it's it's genetic, and then it's social engineering. And I go into social engineering because it's rarely talked about, but it's probably for humans one of the most important aspects that they understand. Social engineering is propaganda, but it's also mind control.
Right.
And I talk about Tavistock, and I talk about the Macy conferences, and our psychologists are the ones that put this together. So, so the social engineering that we're undergoing. So a lot of people right now are talking about the train wreck in East Palestine, Ohio, with a chemical spill. It's all over the news. Well, of course, somebody went out, and there was a Netflix last year all about and filmed in East Palestine, all about a train derailment and a chemical spill. So it's an art of what I guess what really struck me hard was I realized that these transhumanists and these technocrats wanted to move us into an absolute artificial system of life, or an absolute artificial reality, and that natural human consciousness reality would not be a part of what they were creating.
Right. It seems, though, that while that is happening, it does seem like the exoconscious human are developing even faster or just as fast. Is that true?
I think so. I think what's happening, and you know, I don't know the source of it, but so I do the exoconscious coaching, and one of the groups is working on orbs. And what we were talking about today was, so camera technology has moved forward.
I kind of wanted to go into all the things that you do. So this is kind of a good lead up to that, because I want to go over the classes and all the things.
Yeah. Okay.
I've got your website up here ready to ask you those questions.
Thank you. So we were talking about the technology of cameras, and cameras today can not only focus better. So, you know, when you focus your iPhone or in any kind of smartphone, it'll give that little square and it'll focus in on that one person. That focus ability of your camera also combined with the flash is so much more penetrating that all of a sudden now we can take pictures of things that maybe we telepathically know there's an orb out there. We walk outside, we see the orb, and we can take a picture of it.
Right.
And so we were talking about how not only is technology increasing this focus and ability to shine a light on things, but there must be a component in the human eye, that there must be some kind of optic nerve development that's happening, that's allowing humans now more than ever to see these beings and to see these lights and orbs. Right. So it's like one, they're going in the same direction, just using different.
Right. Okay. All right. Well, let's take a break from the heavy stuff and let's go into what you do.
Okay.
All right. Well, let's go ahead. I mean, because there's so many things that you do, and I'm pulling up your website now, and I did have it up here. My phone just went dead. Let me get to it. But let's go ahead and talk about the things that you offer, because I'm just amazed. First is the coaching, the classes that you teach. Can you talk a little bit about those kind of things, about your TV and your YouTube channel? I mean, we could go on and on and on about what you do. There's your website.
Okay, thank you.
She's in the background, and she's taking care of.
Thank you.
Made all these banners and things.
Oh, great. So I have a background as a therapist, and I here in Phoenix for quite some time I worked with a functional MD, and I worked with his chronically ill patients. And so I always wanted to do something with exoconscious humans. I wanted to put that together. And so I had put a questionnaire in the back of my first book. So 2008, I had put a questionnaire, an exoconscious contact questionnaire in the back of that. And someone like you asked me to be on an interview like that was going on for like a whole day or something. And so she said, can you give away something free? And I went, oh yeah, I'll give away that survey in the back of my book.
Right.
And I mean, like 150, 175 people signed up for it. I'm like, wow, people want to have this. This is amazing.
Yeah.
And so really it was from that I decided just to go ahead and start offering exoconscious coaching.
Okay. So exoconscious coaching is for anybody, everybody, or certain few?
Oh, no, it's for anybody. So I'll have people contact me and they'll say, well, I never saw an ET. I never saw a craft. But, I'd like to come to your group. Would I fit in? And I say, absolutely. All humans have some kind of psychic experiences.
Right.
It could be, your grandfather came back to you after he passed over. It could be a lot of people have very spiritual experiences of Buddha and Jesus and angels. All of that is exoconscious, every bit of it. Okay. And so what's been fascinating is the groups are very small. And what I do is I structure things. So I sort of create the vessel for the discussion. Mm-hmm. And then I don't really talk much. The people in the groups talk. And they teach each other and they enlighten each other and they as a group. So the first coaching session lasts for 16 weeks.
Yeah. And I'm in that, or you guys, I'm in her first class, the 16-week class. And we've only met 3 times. And it's amazing how everybody has opened up and is getting comfortable with their experiences. Of course, I'm comfortable because I'm here on YouTube talk about it and I'm writing a book and I'm the one that's sitting there blabbing away and just like spit stuff out. And of course I have discovered some new things that have happened to me, especially in my childhood, but it's amazing to watch the other ones coming out and talking and all of a sudden finding that it's okay to talk about it, which is what we're trying to create here on this channel, is okay to talk about it. But it is a small group. And do you have like a lot of those classes going on at the same time? Or how do you do that?
At one point I had 6. Now I have 5 right now.
And then there's
they're all, I mean, some have gone for like almost 40 weeks. Some have been in the group for 40 weeks. So, but as you're talking, the one thing, well, 2 things surprised me. Number one, it surprised me how incredibly intelligent and psychically aware the people in the group were, even though they didn't realize they were in some cases. So they would show up at the group and they would say, oh, I got the questions we're supposed to discuss this week and I have nothing to say. I'm like, okay.
I was one of those when I don't remember which one it was. I don't have anything to talk about. And then you start asking, I go, oh my gosh, I remember this. I remember that.
That's exactly what happens. It's like this energy that's in this group just triggers everybody triggers our memory. Oh, I never thought of that as exoconscious, or I never thought of that experience as being psychic. The other thing it does is there are some people in the group that are in a crossroads right now. So they have been very engaged in psychic phenomenon and in psychic, maybe healing work or whatever for quite some time. And now they're at a crossroads and they know they're supposed to do something different, but they can't figure out what it is. Right. So a lot of them come into the group to get some definition. So in terms of goals for the group, I guess initially the primary goal is that you can talk about your experience. You can analyze it through this coaching structure that I put together. And it is structured. It's not really about coming on there and talking about just anything.
Right.
There's structure to it, which I think is very, very helpful to people. It grounds us. And one of the things I hope to accomplish is not only that it awakens knowledge in people, but that they can take that awakening and then integrate it into themselves. So coming every week and making that dedication and going through all of the coaching, then what happens is they start to integrate that then into their life. And then I would say the third thing is the co-creation. So it's a big thing for me because so many people, they have an experience and they just want to keep talking about it. I'm like, write your book, move on.
Yeah.
And move on and use what you were given. And a lot of people are like, well, my past life is owning a corporation, or my past life, like you, like as a nurse. So that's not going to really apply here, but it does. It absolutely does. And the integration of that then leads to this very grounded, important co-creative work. Because I think, kind of back to the transhumanism for a minute, what I see happening is that, and one of the people that, really helped me frame this best is Nancy Duterte. She teaches remote viewing, TSP remote viewing. And she wrote the commentary for the back of my book. And if we can just all imagine that we're driving down this highway and we're going head on into this wreck that's going to destroy us, destroy our culture, destroy the earth. And we know that we need to get in the other lane. But in many ways, the other lane isn't built yet because we have to build it. We are the builders. The exoconscious humans are the builders of this other lane. And that's why it's like, tell your story, remember it, go through the coaching, and then go out and start building that road for other people.
That's great. All right. Well, tell us about your television show that you have. I mean, you're like, okay, you do all this coaching, you got your YouTube channel, you've got a television show, and then you have something else that you told me about. How many things are you doing?
I do a lot of individual coaching still too.
Also, yeah, I wanted to go into that too, your individual coaching. And you can go ahead on her website, if Susie, if you put that up again. And she has down here where you can sign up for the classes. And what do you stagger them, or do they all start at the same time? How do you?
Well, actually, the last one started, the one that you are in started. So we probably won't open another class until in the fall.
Okay.
Unless we can come up. But what we are going to do is we have Exoconscious Humans TV. It's part of the Sheila Seppi's Conscious Awakening Network. So we're a channel. So if you have YouTube, if you have Roku, Apple TV, or Amazon Fire TV on your television, then you can access Exoconscious Human series on there. And then we thought, well, not everybody has a television. You could also access it on an app, the Conscious Awakening Network app, through the television. But we thought, well, not everybody has that, but everybody has YouTube.
Right.
So we simultaneously put the programs up on YouTube. So they just go to, so I work with a man named Dan Brock, who's just a wonder. He's an astrologist. He's a dowser. He's a film producer. He's just amazing. We're just good friends, and I love working with him. And so what we decided, so once we put a program together, we put a weekly program together. When that goes up, that just gets placed on all these channels, plus a podcast. So it also goes into the podcast. So just that there's this whole array of how people can, plug into what we're doing. So what I thought, since everybody can't come to the exoconscious coaching, and so that people can through our YouTube, our Exoconscious Humans YouTube, and through the streaming TV, they can participate in what we're calling the Exoconscious Humans progression. So we're going to move people through the first 16 weeks of discussions about exoconscious humans, childhood, birth, childhood, adulthood, co-creation, then go into different kinds of transformations that happen to us in contact, psychological, spiritual, all of that. And then go into more of a co-creation, like what's your co-creation, what's your mission? Because I just keep knocking on that door with people like, okay, let's think about what it is that we're going to do with this. Let's put it to use. And I'm going to also put out an ebook so people can read the ebook and simultaneously watch the videos.
Now,
and kind of do it from home.
This hasn't started yet.
So this hasn't started yet. It'll probably start in a couple of weeks.
Okay, well, there you go. So everybody can jump into that until you open up in a class in the fall. Is that correct?
Right. So that's all that information. If you want to join our newsletter, it's Exoconscious Humans plural.com. And that has all the information about the television show on it.
That's the website name too, isn't it? Okay. Well, there you go. Okay. Well, let's get into some more questions. Okay, you ready?
Okay.
I have a whole list, and we haven't even gotten through any of them. So I'm going to go to the ones I'm specifically interested in. And okay, when you're talking about the transhumans, what about implants that the ETs put into us, and ringing in the ears and those kind of things? And this will be my personal, because I do have an implant in my left ear. And whenever I'm getting information, it just cranks up like, I know when I'm getting ready to go on a mission. I know when something's happening. I know when I'm getting, information coming in because of that implant. And the volume goes up whenever I'm getting a lot of information, and I start paying attention to it. So can you go into some of that versus, I know that's not transhuman, but then again, it kind of seems
there's a technological component.
Right.
To it. Yeah, absolutely. And even in the book, I'm not exclusively anti-transhumanism, obviously I use computers all the time, but what I am is, I have boundaries. I will go this far. I will not go into other types of activities. So, the whole implant situation is very interesting. It's been in the ET community for years. Mm-hmm. And people have removed implants. I personally had an implant removed.
I used to remove implants.
Yeah.
When I was doing the neurosurgeon on the spaceship.
Yeah.
That's what I was doing. Yeah.
So I think that the thing about implants, whether they're, put in by a human or they're put in by an ET, is to always remember that if you want to keep it, fine. And if you don't want to keep it, there's someone out there that can help you remove it, and it will leave. It will leave your body.
Right.
And I also think that implants also oftentimes have a sort of a time lapse to them. Like they're to keep us on a certain timeline for a time.
I would agree with that, because there's so many of them that I've removed that were inactive.
Right. You weren't on that timeline anymore.
Right.
Yeah. So that's also an important thing to realize.
Okay. So what about the ringing in the ears or the buzzing in the ears? Because a lot of people have that. And
the tones.
Yeah.
Sometimes, well, it depends on the person. Oftentimes the tones are an activation.
Right.
It's an activation tool. It's sound. It's sound. Sound is natural. Sound isn't necessarily technological.
Right.
Sound is natural. We have we're kind of like a resonating cavity inside our body, and that sound's going to come to us, and it could be produced from outside and brought into us, or we can actually, people that report seeing angels oftentimes hear these magnificent angelic sounds.
Mm-hmm.
Well, now, did they create them, or did the angels create them, or did they co-create them?
Right.
And I think we have to, a lot of it is, I think humans are going to go, I think this is probably I'm so happy to be alive at this time in life, because I think humans are going to be tapping into abilities that they've never had to use before.
Right.
In order to survive.
Now, when people talk about coming up with the ringing ears, I gave it the label of ascension symptoms.
Could be.
And so that's what I was using or talking about. But I mean, it sounds like to me it's basically all the same thing. But
Yes.
Yeah, whenever my ear cranks up, I'm going, let's pay attention to what's going on.
Pay attention. Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah. I think it's what, and you know, you can look back in the history of religion and the singing and the chanting and the harmonics, say in a cathedral, all of those harmonics and that singing was to nothing but put that cavity of the cathedral. You're sitting in the cavity of the cathedral. You are a cavity.
Right.
And you're resonating with this, with all of this that's going on. It's interesting. Someone was talking about the Super Bowl that we just had, and they were saying that they've actually looked at the Super Bowl. People have looked at the Super Bowl spiritually, and they can see people's astral bodies break out of their bodies during the Super Bowl and start to like weave together. The entire stadium starts weaving together as one, as one frequency.
Wow. That's pretty amazing.
Yeah, I think humans do all these things, and we're just now on the cusp of all the exciting things about what it is. I mean, I just have to say that if we lose these abilities that we have, especially these psychic abilities that we have, humans are such an incredibly complex being that is the microcosm of the universe. We each person are a microcosm of the universe. The way our DNA is structured, the way our body's structured, the way our mind is structured, we are a microcosm of the universe. And we need to be here to be that, to hold that space, to play that role.
I agree. Okay. Well, next question I have is, you added to the CE everything a CE6 category. Can you go through what all the CEs are and then tell them what the CE6 is?
Okay, so the early close encounters, so CE is close encounters. So the early close encounters were put together to try in the early studies of UFOs. So they were looking for a classification system in those early years. Alan Hynek in Chicago started to put together the first CE category. So that was, you know, I saw close encounters. So I saw a ship, I saw a craft. I communicated with the craft. I had some kind of interaction beyond just communicating with this craft. So those are the first kind of categories of initially seeing close encounters. And then Jacques Vallée came up with CE4, and CE4 to Jacques Vallée was, he did this beautiful Passport to Manjonia was the name of his book, and he began to classify nature and elementals and kind of what I went through going underground, and said that this is part of folklore, that this has always been with us, that humans have always participated in this consciousness ability, and that we need to study it as that, which was really important. And then Stephen Greer did CE5, and he started saying that, you know, this is a mutually beneficial communication from the craft out there with CE5 to humans. And we need to look at it like that. So I think that exoconscious humans are CE6. So we're beginning to go back to that whole thing I was talking about with the groups. CE6, because not only are we consciously participating, now we're integrating, and now we're co-creating, intentionally creating this. So CE5 was more, they're showing up and we're reacting. This is more, we are the interaction.
Right. Okay, that was a great explanation. Thank you. Okay, all right. Well, we're coming up close to an hour, so I want to go more into the things that you're doing again. And again, I'm going to show the book, The Exoconscious Humans.
Thank you.
And go ahead and you can get this on Amazon and go ahead and read that because this is interesting. This is about the exoconscious humans and it also talks about the transhumans. And there's a lot of information, a lot of research that went into this book. I can't believe how much research you do. You must be just a research freak. I'm going looking at my book and going, there's absolutely no research.
Well, it's a different kind of book. Yeah. If there's researchers out there, I cannot more strongly guide you to some platform like Evernote to save your research.
Yeah. Okay.
It's so important. Yeah.
Okay.
If that's the kind of book you're writing.
Yes. And I don't know that I am not the research. Susie, who's in the background, does all my detail stuff.
Oh,
I am not that person. I'm not even the speller. I'm not any of that. So I just do. So anyway, thanks, Rebecca, for coming. Is there any last words you'd like to say to people about what you want them to get? Of course, buy your books and come join your groups. And also, what type of services do you offer as in like a one-on-one?
Well, I do a lot of one-on-one coaching.
Right.
And I have that also. So if you go under Exoconscious Coaching, there's groups, different kinds of groups you can join. And then there's the one-on-one coaching. So I do a lot of work, my therapy work in trauma and the attachments or the form of attachments that we go into. I do a lot of spiritual work with that. It's exciting. I love doing that.
Okay. All right. Well, thanks, Rebecca. Thanks, everybody, for joining us.
Thanks, Gail.
Thanks, Susie. Hang on just a few minutes, Rebecca. I want to talk to you as we leave. So I'll just say goodbye to everybody. All right. And let me make the announcement. Saturday, we're doing all about aliens and ETs. And we'll be bringing on, and that's Saturday, and it'll be at 12 o'clock Pacific time, 3 o'clock Eastern time. And also Kevin Briggs is coming on Friday, the 24th. And we all saw him before. He's very interesting and has a lot to say. So, but anyway, all about aliens this Saturday. And we'll be bringing on, we've got 3 people that are going to come on and talk about their experiences. So I'm excited about that. So anyway, all right. Thanks everybody for joining us and we will see you. All right. Bye-bye.